What's going on, Rockford, Illinois, and Grassroots Church? I'm Evan Savage, the lead pastor here at Grassroots, and today we're going to do a video on that goes along with our sermon series called "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" That Mr. Rogers theme, and we're talking about really the theme of this and the idea behind this sermon series is that we are looking into what it means if we took God's commandment, Christ's commandment, to love our neighbor as ourselves, as literally as possible. In other words, what does it look like if we walked next door to the people who live next door and we just love them as much as we possibly could? So if you've missed Grassroots in a while, I invite you to come back to learn a little bit more and to join with us in this journey. One thing that we're doing as a church is we are committing to 100% focused on dedicating our ministry for this season to the neighbors that are right next door to us. We are committed to getting to know names, getting to know lifestyles, getting to know backgrounds and histories and stories of those who live closest to us. So we're committed to creating community with those who we see every day, but we might not talk to. And it reminds me of Jeremiah chapter 29, and we're going to be in verse 4, beginning in verse 4. It says this: "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried out of exile, or into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Yes, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Do not let the prophets and diviners among you deceive you. Do not listen to the dreams you encourage them to have. They are prophesying lies to you in my name. I have not sent them, declares the Lord." You see, what we look at Jeremiah, we look at specifically Jeremiah 29, and the famous verse is Jeremiah 29:11, which is, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And we tend to think of that as the kind of a bigger picture thing in our lives, a bigger picture call to our lives. But when we look at the first however many verses in this chapter, we see that God is calling us to be the best neighbors possibly in our current context. Not to focus on maybe where God is taking us in the future. If you know the history of Israel, God eventually brings the Israelites out of that exile in Babylon about 60 years down the road. But what we see here is that God is calling us to build houses, to plant gardens, to get to know our neighbors. God's calling us to move into the neighborhood and to be what I would call, or what many people would call, incarnated into your area, your neighborhood, your street, your block. What this looks like for us as a church, and what we're going to do over the next little while, is that we're kicking off groups, our house church aspect of what we do as a community. And what we're going to do something a little bit unique over the next 6 weeks. Our house churches are going to be committed to learning more about how to neighbor and how to neighbor well. So what we're going to do as a church is that we are going to join a group, and we are going to be committed to learning how to neighbor through a study called The Art of Neighboring. And I would encourage you, if you come to Grassroots, to sign up for one of these groups and to learn more over the next 6 weeks what it looks like to neighbor and to neighbor well, and learn how you could build authentic and real communities with those who live closest to you, how you could turn your house into a lighthouse for your neighborhood. Thank you, and we'll see you soon, and hopefully we'll see you Sunday.